The reason behind Aryna Sabalenka's outburst was evident to the entire tennis community. Roger Federer, the most famous person in sports history, stopped for Alexandra Eala after passing the world number one. It cannot be written off behind the polished facade of corporate decorum. It is neither a coincidence nor an accident. A 20-year-old from the Philippines, ranked 31st in the world, had a 20-time Grand Slam champion's undivided attention in the same hallway as the current Australian Open finalist. What erupted at that one unforeseen moment exposed tensions that had been quietly festering beneath the surface of women's tennis for months. Furthermore, nothing could have foretold the outcome of the photo's public release. To fully understand the seriousness of what happened, you must first understand the empire Aryna Sabalenka had constructed over the preceding 3 years, brick by relentless brick. She carried the burden of being the world number one when she arrived at Indian Wells in March 2026. Through Grand Slam finals, physical brutality, and the kind of psychological warfare that eliminates inferior opponents before the first ball is hit, she had held that top spot with oppressive consistency, not ceremonially or momentarily. With 13 wins and 1 defeat heading into Indian Wells in 2026, her record suggests dominance without further justification. A few weeks before, she had proceeded to the Australian Open final, where she met Aryna Sabalenka in what was widely regarded as the best hard-court match of the early months of the year. She lost from a position of seeming control, giving up a 3-0 lead in the last set, and the defeat obviously undermined her public image. Press conferences after the tournament revealed a Sabalenka ready to talk about her pain and her continued pursuit of a third Australian Eager title with the compassion and unabashed honesty that had come to characterize her. She was wounded when she departed Melbourne. When she arrived in the California desert, she was resolute. Sabalenka's degree of competition was reflected in her commercial presence. Her cooperation with Nike gave her visibility in international markets. Because she refused to pretend to be calm, her highly competitive, vulnerable, and volatile attitude had drawn a loyal following. After winning, she celebrated with her entire body. When she lost, she did not use diplomacy as a cushion to absorb the devastation. Her sincerity had made her popular during a period when athlete brands were strictly regulated. But unlike any previous competition, Indian Wells 2026 has a distinct aura. Sabalenka was facing opponents who were either above or next to her for the first time. Sabalenka faced a completely different kind of challenge from a 20-year-old newcomer whose cultural gravity had begun to attract the sport's collective attention in a direction she had never had to defend before. Former ATP stars had already revealed it to the public. On the Nothing Major podcast, Steve Johnson addressed Sam Querrey's direct question, "Is Eala bigger than Sabalenka?" with a single, distinct yes. Eala's audience appeal, according to John Isner, functioned at a scale that defied conventional ranking logic. Instead of just a young player, the tennis community was witnessing a phenomenon. Sabalenka went into Indian Wells practice courts. The atmosphere welcomed her as the global number one, but before any photograph could verify it, she sensed a shift in the atmosphere. "Are you still present?" Good, because what happened in that hallway fundamentally altered the notion of star power in the professional tennis scene. Roger Federer's attendance at every tennis tournament continues to have an impact even after his retirement. Only recent champions could hear the cry from thousands of fans as he appeared at the Laver Cup fan zone in San Francisco in 2025. He told Andy Roddick in a live podcast interview that he was unable to fully give up the sport, which is why he remained so close to it. "In tennis, we forget the legends of our sport," he thought. "I became a little depressed every time I didn't see the heroes." Federer did not compete at Indian Wells 2026. Instead, he represented the organization as an ambassador. The BNP Paribas environment is part of his legacy because of his 11-title association with the California desert, and the fifth slam offers distinction worthy of his attention. No other competitor can match the electricity he creates simply by being in the player's proximity. Cameras reroute, conversations cease, and halls reorganize to make room for him. On the afternoon that everything changed, Federer walked across the competition site with the calm confidence of someone who understands their own irreversibility. He gave embraces, accepted photos with tournament officials, and greeted familiar faces with the kindness that made him universally adored during his competitive career. Along the path connecting practice facilities to the main stadium complex, players, coaches, and tournament personnel were negotiating pre-match preparation procedures. Sabalenka, the world number one, was one of them, preparing for her campaign. Champions arrive with a goal, a focus, and the implicit belief that someone of her caliber would be acknowledged wherever she goes in the sports industry. Then Alexandra Eala entered the same space. The subsequent events were unplanned. It wasn't a scheduled conversation or a public event. It was the chance encounter between a tennis legend and a player whose story had clearly had a profound impact on his conscience. Federer greeted Eala with the kind of affection and recognition that he reserved for athletes whose narratives matched the benchmarks he had spent 2 decades establishing. He stopped. He spoke with her. He either requested or agreed to a snapshot, and the event was captured with a permanence that only digital evidence can provide. Sabalenka left after seeing this from the same hallway. Her body language conveyed that she had learned something significant and had made the decision to move on rather than stay still. Neither cautiously nor diplomatically subsequently, several eyewitnesses and tournament insiders described the occurrence in a consistent manner, saying that Sabalenka did not just depart the area but she did it with a clear and unmistakable dissatisfaction, and the energy she radiated from that corridor was not at all like the professional neutrality champions typically display in public. The photo of Federer and Eala went viral on social media in a matter of hours. Sabalenka's absence from that photo quickly turned into a terrible statement in and of itself. The speed at which that one photograph became viral on tennis social media even outpaced the increased rate at which viral moments typically spread. In less than 48 hours, the post garnered millions of views across multiple media. In just 72 hours, it has expanded well beyond the tennis-specific ecosystem to mainstream sports media websites. This framing was swiftly and brutally embraced by online communities. Eala is Federer's favorite over Sabalenka. The world number one was rendered invisible by the greatest sports legend. As a 20-year-old rookie, the current champion was never crowned by the same person. The fan commentary ran simultaneously on 2 separate tracks. The picture was seen as indicative of a change that ILA supporters, a sizable global Filipino community whose attendance at the event created standing room conditions from Melbourne to Dubai, had been calling for months. Steve Johnson's comments on the Nothing Major podcast received thousands of comments. ILA attracted amazing crowds. The spectators for her games only made up standing room in stadiums on different countries. One fan comment that attracted a lot of attention was Federer's recognition of brilliance before the rankings catch up. Another phrase was extensively disseminated in Filipino tennis communities was, "The legend knows who the next legend is." Sabalenka's supporters mounted a counter-offensive that was just as passionate but far more defensive. The world's best player has a 13-1 record in 2026. She has made it to the Grand Slam finals 4 times in a row. She performed exceptionally well throughout generations, as evidenced by her statistical consistency. The notion that one unexpected snapshot could tarnish that record was seen by her fans as not only false but deliberately hurtful. Martina Navratilova has recently assessed Eala as one of the up-and-coming WTA stars. Along with the photo, her statement went viral, supporting the notion that all of the superstars in sports were focusing on the Filipino phenomena. Paul Anacone, who had coached Federer himself, described Eala as having a smile that lights up a room in an analysis of her game on TC Live. He also praised the grace with which she defeated Iga Swiatek at Miami, a grace that clearly resonated with a 20-time Grand Slam champion, who is now pictured next to her. The WTA Tour's scheduling history added to the debate's escalating ferocity. According to a spectator who was extensively featured in Tennis 365's February 2026 piece, Eala was undoubtedly the most well-known player competing at the time, but the event managers had regularly booked her at unusual times on weaker courts. When Dubai ultimately placed her as the final match on center court, the article praised them for making the right choice. Sabalenka was the unquestionable outstanding event for many years. Questions regarding that designation were now created by the discussion, and a photo of Roger Federer cemented those questions into something that could not be ignored. The interview followed, which accelerated the process. Sabalenka responded to a reporter's direct question about the media attention around Agla's Indian Wells debut with a well-crafted but obviously loaded statement. In Miami 2025, she acknowledged Agla's breakthrough. She acknowledged the crowd. She didn't acknowledge the photo. She did not recognize Federer. She used the precise phrases of a competitor who has practiced public management of a subject they don't want to discuss in public. The deliberate absence, the clear gap where acknowledgement may have been given, told its own story. Additionally, because they were adept at picking up on the gaps between athlete remarks, the tennis community read it with ease. Kim Kleister recently discussed Aryna's celebrity and stated that the little Filipina should be protected from the pandemonium that accompanies it. Kleisters, a world number one who was obviously rattled by the attention a ranked 31st player was receiving from the sport's most famous retired winner, may not have anticipated the specific nature of that craziness. But in unexpected ways, her warning proved to be prophetic. The Eala community around the world put up a fierce, well-organized, and persistent fight against Sabalenka. With the unwavering passion of a fan base that had been waiting years for this kind of external recognition and was reluctant to allow anyone, regardless of ranking, undermine it, it dominated podcast discussions, tennis forums, and social media comment sections. The story becomes more complex and human when the politicized fan communities, social media amplification, and narrative convenience that frames every interaction as validation of preconceived beliefs are eliminated. Aryna Sabalenka is not weakened by Alexandra Eala's ascent. The factual record makes this evident. Her consistent Grand Slam final appearances, her 13-1 record in 2026, and her ranking leadership maintained by margins suggest structural superiority at the pinnacle of the sport's competitive hierarchy rather than ephemeral luck. Coco Gauff's 6-0, 6-2 victory over Eala in Dubai demonstrated the gap between a 20-year-old who is still striving for that caliber and the current WTA elite. Eala lacks the experience necessary for Sabalenka to perform at such a high level. However, Federer's decision, which was made in real time without adhering to a plan or protocol, revealed something that rankings and tournament victories cannot fully capture. Star power operates at a different frequency than competitive success. Naomi Osaka earned $57 million from endorsements in a year when injuries hindered her ability to compete. Emma Raducanu played in 10 games during a season and made $16 million in.